Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Indie Alaska is an innovative weekly web series capturing the diverse and colorful lifestyle of Alaskans. Real stories of everyday Alaskans at work and play. Supported in part by Alyeska Pipeline Service Company.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. There's still a winter weather advisory out for St. Lawrence Island. That's out tonight and until 4 p.m. tomorrow. Winds gusting out of the northeast up to 50 miles an hour and up to 3 inches of new snow. That'll reduce visibilities down to a half mile at times tonight and tomorrow. It also includes the coast there, the Bering Strait coast of the St. Lawrence or Seward Peninsula area, but does not include Nome. And there's a winter weather advisory until 9 p.m. this evening here for the Yukon Delta. 3 to 5 inches of snow, gusty winds, and actually this is out more for the freezing rain that's in the forecast there. Just areas of light freezing rain possible this evening, and then otherwise later tonight just rain and snow in that area as a little milder conditions move in. And there's a high wind watch out. You can't see it because the Anchorage dot covers it up. That's out for Turnagain Arm and higher elevations of the Chugach Mountains, say from Potter's Marsh to Palmer. That's out for late tomorrow afternoon. Expecting winds to increase 40 to 50 miles an hour with possible gusts to 65 miles an hour tomorrow afternoon. But tomorrow night could see gusts up to 80 miles per hour. So it's a watch, not really a warning, which means hazardous wind event is possibly could happen, which would be limb breaker, power line snapper, that type of thing, tree uprooter, shingle remover, that sort of thing. On the chart today, we had this first front that came on shore yesterday, weakening and moving through. That's what brought the areas of light snow into south central Alaska today. And another system right on its heels, bringing more strong winds into the southwest coast. Cape Newenham had gusts of 61 miles per hour and are seeing southeasterlies of 40 to 50 miles an hour here along the remainder of the coastline. Of course, the winter weather advisories there for the Yukon Delta and St. Lawrence Island. Back out here to the west, you can see this area dropping southeastward. And off the chart here, another wave along this frontal boundary. Those two are going to get together and come over and then move northward. And that's what's expected to increase the winds markedly tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow night across south central Alaska. And probably even the next day, you'll see those winds pick up for the passes of the central and eastern Alaska range, like Delta Junction and over toward Healy and those areas. But not a bad day here over the southeast coast. Looked like a fair amount of sunshine there from Dixon Entrance all the way up to, well, the Klondike Highway. A few showers did hit the Yakutat area earlier today with some of this stuff right and through there. But there were some breaks over the central interior. And again, clearing out behind this front a little bit here over south central Alaska, Cook Inlet, but then the higher clouds already spreading back in from this next system. Another trough back out through here, as I pointed out earlier. Main low center there kind of wound up south of St. Lawrence Island. On the chart, there's that 977 millibar low with the front this morning in this position that's now moving inland, and the initial trough right through here, which was yesterday's front, weakening, continued to dissipate as it drifts off to the east. And this will weaken as well as it pushes eastward tonight, but then the next wave coming up, which would be roughly about this position tonight. The other one's still down here off the chart, kind of linking up in this position here. But again, look for the when the front rolls through, the winter weather advisory should end, get more of a mixed precipitation condition going there over the Yukon Delta, and then following with some snow showers. The freezing levels will drop once again, and then the snow and blowing snow, St. Lawrence Island, back to the Bering Strait coast there, Tin City and Teller. Those areas looking, again, visibility is down to a half mile at times. The Arctic coast, not too bad, dry conditions. Look for an increase in the winds here from, say, Point Lay on down into the Chukchi Sea, or the southeast portion of the Chukchi Sea, and even Kotzebue Sound. Could see a few flurries up in that area, but generally dry here over the eastern interior. This south to north flow makes it really tough for any moisture to get north of the Alaska Range into the Tanana Valley, but over the White Mountains in the upper Yukon could be a few isolated snow showers or flurries. Still a lingering shower or two there around the Yakutat area, but the southeast coast just variably cloudy and dry for tonight. And then tomorrow, that low center moves to near Nunivak Island, and then the other center closes off and begins a northward track here. See the pressure gradient tightening up for tomorrow afternoon, and as this continues northward tomorrow evening, tomorrow night, and the high holds here to the east, that'll put the pretty good squeeze on the atmosphere there. So those gusts 80 miles an hour or higher are pretty possible again for western Turnagain Arm and from Potter's Marsh up to Palmer. Could see those strong wind gusts occurring if it moves to the exact right location. The front stays to the west, and the pressure gradient is oriented north-south as opposed to northwest-southeast. Then the eastern end of the arm gets the strong winds, but right now it looks pretty good for a strong wind event coming in either way, the direction that's moving northward for tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow night. And actually then Tuesday, the low lifts northwards, the winds will be coming down. Look for rain and snow here across south central Alaska, especially in the favored upslope areas. This front pushing eastward brings a chance of rain into the northern southeast coast. Rain for sure in Yakutat with the front right on top of you just about. And starting out pretty nice over the southern southeast areas there, and then look for an increase in the clouds throughout the day. Snow and blowing snow occurring here for the western Brooks Range, Point Hope, possibly Kivalina into the Bering Strait, but the advisory should end and be over for St. Lawrence Island. And looking at some brisk northwesterlies, 15 to 30 miles an hour with a lot of snow showers and the colder air. Trough axis right here, kind of the leading edge of that colder air mass, more of a mixture of rain and snow, areas to the east of that. And the next storm entering the Bering Sea here, driving a front eastward into the Aleutians, could spread rain all the way to Atka by Tuesday afternoon. Higher pressure drying it out and dropping the winds off over the eastern Aleutians. Same thing for the Pribilofs. Not a bad day on Tuesday, maybe some sunny breaks. And again, diminishing winds for St. Lawrence Island. Temperatures today, 52 degrees down in the greater Klawock area. Otherwise 48 at Sitka, 46 there at Elephant Cove, with 46 also in Yakutat. Valdez checked in with 39, 41 at Golcana. That same temperature observed also at Northway. 10 degrees cooler though here at Delta Junction with 31. And Fairbanks at 27. Fort Yukon just 18 this afternoon, but Tanana up to 26. Bettles had 23. Single numbers there over the Brooks Range with Anatuvik at 9. Arctic Village 12 above. And again, temperatures either side of zero here, depending on where you are along the Arctic coast. 6 above at Kaktovik with -4 at Dead Horse. Barrow up to 2. 7 below at Point Lay, and then 16 at Point Hope. Lower to mid 20s here across Kotzebue Sound, and upper 20s there both at Nome and at Tin City, as well as Gamble on St. Lawrence Island. 30 degrees at St. Michael and a 35 in McGrath. A little bit of snow at times earlier today, and kind of a range of 30s here on down the Kuskokwim River Valley to the Delta, with Bethel at 37. 36 at on Nunivak Island at Macoriac, and upper 30s here for the Pribilofs, both 38 at St. George and St. Paul, 44 at Unalaska, and 40s, lower 40s here on the western part of the peninsula, the Aleutian Range side of things, 45 at Pilot Point and a 48-degree reading at Port Heiden, with 42 at Kodiak, 43 at Atka, but only 39 at Adak and Shimia, 38 degrees. Lows tonight, 10 to 20 below here for the North Slope and the Arctic coast, with milder conditions out along the Arctic coast. Closer to -20 will be over the North Slope. And then again, the 0-degree isotherm right along the Brooks Range there. So south of that area, looks like 10 to 20 for the lows, and then 20s to lower 30s as you head off to the southwest, with 32 the forecast low at St. Paul, 34 the forecast low for Shimia, Adak and Attu, or Adak and Atka. 37 there at Unalaska, mid to upper 30s here for the Bristol Bay area, lower to mid 30s for south central Alaska, 30s for all of the Panhandle. And the highs tomorrow, Not a bad day again with some sunshine reaching the lower 50s there for the southern southeast coast. Some areas could reach 55 degrees, cooler 40s to the north, and 45 to 50 give or take here for south central Alaska. 45 to 50 also there. 50 forecast for Fairbanks tomorrow. 44 over at Eagle. Cooling off drastically here, especially as you cross the Brooks Range, staying below zero again along the Arctic coast and portions of the North Slope. Upper 30s forecast for the Aleutians and the western Alaska Peninsula. Flying weather, lots of IFR here. South to north flow carrying that moisture and interacting with the terrain just will make for a broad area of IFR from Yakutat westward across Prince William Sound, the southern Kenai Peninsula down to the east side of Kodiak Island, and then areas of here, especially on the upslope areas, the eastern slopes of the Alaska Range, even the southern slopes and areas here due to that strong south to north flow. Big batch of IFR from the Bering Strait right down to Nunivak Island, including the Pribilofs, and marginal VFR with areas of IFR up along the Arctic coast. Taking a look at passes for Anatuvik, not too bad. Look for some possible deteriorating conditions on the southern approach. Otherwise, VFR through the pass and on to the north. Adigan looks good VFR, either entrance and through the pass. Lake Clark and Merrill. For the western Alaska Range, lowest conditions IFR likely on the eastern entrances, and then better, possible lot VFR off to the west. Definitely looking at marginal through the pass. Rainy, same forecast, lowest conditions on the eastern entrance, probably IFR, otherwise marginal. And for windy, that south to north flow, look for the lowest conditions on the southern entrance here, VFR out the north entrance. And for Isabel, that same sort of pattern, IFR in the southern entrance, better to the north, and I think Mentasta will be occasionally marginal, but still probably VFR on the north side. And Tanita, possible marginal VFR on the eastern entrance. For Portage, much like we saw today, IFR, lowest conditions, eastern entrance. Could be IFR all the way through, but low IFR on the east side if the west side's IFR. And for Chilkoot and White, another pretty nice day. Freezing levels, that southerly flow here pulling warmer air northward, 2,000 feet getting into the southern inlet, northeast Bristol Bay, and then out along across the southern panhandle at the surface, actually coming northward to St. Lawrence Island. That's going to give that freezing rain threat this evening to the Yukon Delta area, and then kind of meandering back out over the Bering Sea. Taking a look at icing. Again, good southerly flow here, so look for some light to isolated, moderate rime or mixed icing here in the yellow areas, spreading almost over in toward, well, Elfin Cove, and that's about it. But the heavier stuff, the occasional widespread moderate rime will be from Kodiak Island into the Aleutian Range and then along the southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula, extending back down to, well, I won't say Fognak, but into the Barren Islands, and then areas of areas of icing possible here up over the mountain, Kuskokwim mountain areas, and then more spotty stuff here to the west. Upper level wind flow chart showing good south to southwest flow, 90 knots. That's going to carry that storm low center right northward, and it'll have pretty good upper support here with that ridge shifting eastward. And again, the falling pressures back to the west, that'll kick the winds up across south central Alaska tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow night. And pretty good southerly flow here coming in at 9,000 feet with 35 knots. That'll advance northward throughout the day tomorrow, and again tomorrow night be the strongest with general low pressure out in this area. Good northwest winds, 35 to 40 knots coming across the central Bering Sea, dropping down into the central and east central Aleutians. 9,000 feet, perfect setup for strong winds at this elevation. 40 knots southerly flow coming in at 3,000 to 4,000 feet. That's just what you want to see for strong winds to occur here across south central Alaska. And pretty good winds blowing around this center, 35 to 40 knots, northwesterlies, west northwesterlies. Take more of a westerly turn there across the greater Dutch Harbor and Unalaska area. And picking up those easterlies again along the Arctic coast up to 35 knots, but lighter 15 to 20 knot winds or less there for the Panhandle and the North Gulf Coast. Turbulence-wise, occasional moderate chop. I didn't throw any severe in. Go with occasional widespread moderate. Probably the severe turbulence would come in late tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow night here across south central Alaska if that storm moves in the right direction. So occasional moderate chop should cover it for right now, and then areas of moderate chop with those good northwest winds out here, just clipping the Pribilofs, Cape Sarachev, eastern Aleutians out to the Adak and Atka areas. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
A flood mitigation plan can help communities identify measures that can be taken to reduce damage to property and risk to life caused by flooding.
Well, this is an anchor for the boardwalks. We got an anchor about every 20 feet on both sides. So if the water comes up, don't move the boardwalks around. Before we had these anchors down, we had boardwalks maybe about 10 feet off the current after the flooding went down. The cable's just like a harpoon tip. You drive it down and pull it and it's wedged itself, locked. We had this for a couple of years now. Last year we didn't have no problem with boardwalk repair.
Every community is different because of its history, people, geography, weather, and location. All of these factors can be a cause for flooding or a benefit that guards against flooding.
Those chunks were really big around here too. We had water clear up to the steps up here.
We saw it land.
Communities need to know their flood history and to also understand that while past history is very important in predicting a flood, it is no guarantee because weather patterns are constantly changing and places that never flooded in recent memory might flood today. They need to identify the flood-prone areas of their village. With this knowledge, good decisions about site locations for new buildings or moving old buildings can be made.
You were here when it flooded so bad you were up to that marker. Has anybody talked about moving the post office?
I wouldn't mind if it's moved. I think this is a bad place for it with flood every year. It doesn't always come up, but I think it would be better if it was up in a higher place.
89 we had a flood. This was what happened during the flood. It was a good spot down here. I wasn't worried about any flood. I didn't think we would have it. Built my house back in a little higher ground and where this was now.
You think you'll have problems with flooding in your new house?
I don't think so. I hope not. It's a little higher than where this one is.
It's pretty sad to lose your house, but can't do anything about it, I guess.
But not all buildings can be moved to safe ground. In these instances, communities can take other measures, such as flood control projects, seeking assistance from state and federal agencies, flood insurance programs, flood alert systems, public awareness and preparation programs, and learning the benefits of land use regulations. There is also the reality that many villages are located in floodplains where flooding occurs yearly. However, serious damage can be avoided if structures are built out of the floodway. Floodproofing buildings will minimize damage even in floodplains. This can be done by elevating living spaces above flood levels and good soil drainage. If structures have to be built in floodplains, then access routes to higher ground are essential. Other factors that need to be considered are erosion, wave action, and drainage impacts. If buildings are elevated in floodplains, utility pipes, electrical connections, water and sewer lines, and fuel and propane tanks also need to be floodproofed according to code. To enforce sound building practices in floodplain areas, it is a good idea to require development permits from individuals and even government agencies. Decisions that are made by others outside the community, even government agencies, should be filtered through the collective wisdom, knowledge, and life experience of the people who live on the river. One way to ensure good decisions and good development of your community is to learn all you can about your river, your history, and where you live.
My little nephew Chucky, he come home for a week. He was disgusted with that school teacher. We cannot get that teacher to put things up. Well, this is what they're used to doing every spring. It's a precaution that everybody takes. And The school teacher is pretty new, and he said, "Oh, you kids don't know what you're talking about." About, oh, I don't know, about midnight, the water started coming in, and I mean, it came in a hurry. Well, the poor school teacher, he had to roll up to the store and got his wife and his 2 boys out. And so he got out. Next day we came down and we walked around and he was out there. Oh man, I tell you what a mess he had. Everything was wet in his house. These little kids came along, my nephew and his little buddies. And, Mr. Rasmussen, you should have listened to us old timers.
We should get a name of this course.
Mr. Rasmussen was quite disgusted and cussing under his breath, and my brother and I, we laughed so much over that. But everybody knows every spring you have to be prepared.
Welcome back. Well, not too bad on the winds here. West to southwest on the south coast there at about 10 knots, south to southeast 15, areas to the north, and variable to light westerlies coming up to west 10 in the afternoon for the central interchannels there, Frederick Sound, for example, northwest 15 there for Clarence Strait. And Lynn Canal in the afternoon, winds forecast to come up to 25 knots with seas building to 5 feet. And then for Tuesday, a little windier, small craft advisories all along the coast, southerlies 25 to 30 knots and southeast 30, the way it looks right now for the north coast, those seas building 10 to 12 feet. And still south 25 with seas 5 feet for Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, southeasterlies 20 knots for the central and southern inside waters, seas running at about 4 feet. And for the Prince William Sound forecast, east coming up to 25 knots tomorrow afternoon. Small craft advisories here all along the North Gulf Coast, the Barren Islands, southeast 30 knots. A gale warning out for Kamishak Bay there around Augustine Island for southeast 35 knots. That same forecast here along the east side of Kodiak Island. Shelikof Strait, small craft advisories for those southeasterlies. And south of the Forelands there in Cook Inlet, northeast 25, only 15 knots in the forecast for the northern Cook Inlet area. And then on Tuesday, winds coming down from the overnight hours tomorrow night here, especially into the afternoon, but still gales along the coast there. Otherwise, small craft advisories for the western Gulf Coast, southwest or south to southwest in the afternoon, coming down 25 to 30 knots there, Kodiak Island. And southeast, again, much higher gusts coming out of Turnagain Arms starting tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow night, and then beginning to let up on Tuesday, but this pattern still for those stronger winds out of the arm. So southeast 20 for northern Cook Inlet, 25 knots from the south for the central and southern areas there, and down under even small craft advisories for Kamishak Bay. For Bristol Bay tomorrow, light westerlies, but westerlies coming up to 35 knots here. For the Alaska Peninsula, southwest 25 knots for Sitkinak to Chignik. And then on Tuesday, westerlies 25 knots, small craft advisories everywhere here, west winds 25 to 30 knots with seas 8 to 13 feet. And out in the Aleutians, all the gales will be from about Adak eastward to Unalaska with west to northwesterlies 35 to 40 knots, 30 knots here for the Adak-Atka area, and back out to the west, winds coming down to 20. And the outlook for Tuesday, again, that next system coming in, a front driving eastward, so gale warnings at 35 knots, pushing that front eastward, takes a little more southwest turn in direction, 25 to 30 knots for the central Aleutians, and then the eastern zones here, west to northwest, 25 to 30 knots. And for the southwest coast, north of Nunivak Island, southeast at 25, but gales out for St. Lawrence Island through tomorrow, and those blowing down into the northern Bering Sea. West 40 for the Pribilofs, seas up to 18 feet. Southwest 25 here, blowing right into Kuskokwim Bay with those seas up to 12 feet. And then we'll see what's in store for Tuesday. Same speed, but the direction becomes northwest now. 25 knots, seas only 7 feet. Northwesterlies diminish as you head up the coastline, coming down to about 15 knots for St. Lawrence Island. Even lighter for the northern Bering, and those winds dropping off westerlies 20 for the Pribilofs. For the Arctic coast, east winds 30 knots, sums it up from demarcation point all the way out to about Point Ley, then more of a northeast wind at the same speed, 30 knots. Brisk wind advisories here for southeast Chukchi Sea and into Kotzebue Sound. Then on Tuesday, no change up here except gales, a little tighter gradient here. Should kick it into gales here for the western Arctic coast as well. Otherwise, the central and eastern Beaufort Sea coastline stay east at 30 knots. Winds drop off here for the southeast portions of, from Wales to Cape Thompson, northeast at 20. And for tonight, here's that low center south of St. Lawrence Island. Winter weather advisory out there for snow and blowing snow. Visibility is a half a mile through 4 p.m. tomorrow. And then throw some mixture of the precipitation here into the Yukon Delta. Otherwise, that pushing through brings another chance of moisture into south central Alaska. It's this wave moving northward, high wind watch out for the higher elevations of East Anchorage and Turnagain Arm, especially the west end of Turnagain Arm, for gusts tomorrow night as high as 80 miles an hour or more. And then that moves through and it improves a little bit on Tuesday with the front pushing eastward, chance of rain in the northern panhandle. There's the next storm out to the west. Well, that's a look at the weather. Thanks again for joining us.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.